Good afternoon, I'm Suhani Shah. Today I'll be performing three pieces, passage of prose, a sonnet and a monologue. The first piece that I'll be performing is a passage of prose taken from The Landlady by Roald Dahl, written in the year 1957. It was the first short stories to initially appear in the New Yorker. It revolves around Billy Weaver's strange encounter with a landlady who owns a bed and breakfast. It underlines the theme of mystery and thrill. Billy sat down his teacup slowly on the table and stared at his landlady. She looked back at him and put out one of her white hands and patted him comfortingly on the knee. "How old are you, my dear?" she asked. 17. 17? She cried. "Oh, that's the perfect age." Mr. Mulholland was also 17. He was a trifle shorter than you are. In fact, I'm sure he was. And his teeth weren't quite so white. "You have the most beautiful teeth, Mr. Weaver. Did you know that?" "They're not as good as they look," said Billy. "They simply have masses of fillings in them at the back." "Mr. Temple, of course, was a little older," she said, ignoring his remark. Actually, he was 28, although I would have never guessed if he hadn't told me. Never in my whole life. His skin, there wasn't a blemish on his body. "A what?" said Billy. "His skin was just like a baby's." There was a pause. Billy waited for her to say something. He took his teacup and took another sip of his tea and placed it back down on its saucer. He waited for her to say something, but she had lapsed into another one of her silences. Billy sat there staring at the far corner of the room, biting his lower lip. "That parrot," he said at last. "Did you know something? It had me completely fooled when I first saw it through the window from the streets. I could have sworn it was alive. Alas, no longer. It's most terribly clever the way it's been done. It doesn't in the least bit look dead." "Who did it?" "I did." "You did?" "Of course," she said. "And have you met my little Basil as well?" She nodded towards the dachshund curled up comfortably in front of the fireplace. Billy looked at it, and suddenly he realized that this animal had all the time been just as motionless and still as the parrot. Billy put out his hand and touched it on the back. It was hard and dry. Then he moved the fur with his fingers and he saw the skin underneath, greyish black and dry and perfectly preserved. "Good gracious me," he said. "How absolutely fascinating! It must be most awfully hard to do something like that." He looked away from the dachshund and stared with deep admiration at the little woman seated beside him on the sofa. "It must be awfully hard to do something like that." "Not in the least," she said. "I stuff all my pets myself when they die. Would you like another cup of tea?" "No, thank you," said Billy. The tea tasted faintly of bitter almonds, and Billy didn't care much for it. "Have you signed the book?" "Of course," said Billy. "Oh, that's good, because later on, if I ever happen to forget what you were called, I can always come down here and look it up. I do that almost every day, with Mr. Mulholland and Mr. Temple," said Billy. "Gregory Temple. Excuse my asking, but haven't there been any other guests here in the past 2 or 3 years except them?" Holding her teacup high in one hand, inclining her head slightly to the left, she looked at Billy through the corner of her eyes and gave him a gentle little smile. "No, my dear," she said. "Only you." The second piece that I will be performing is Sonnet 29 by William Shakespeare, written in the year 1609. It revolves around the character and how he feels as an outcast and a failure, but he feels better upon remembering his beloved one. It revolves around the themes of anxiety and jealousy. Sonnet 29 by William Shakespeare. When in disgrace with fortune and men's eyes, I all alone beweep my outcast state, and trouble deaf heavens with my bootless cries, and look upon myself and curse my fate, wishing me like to one who rich in hope, featured like him with friends possessed, desiring this man's art and that man's hope, with what I most enjoy contended least. Yet in these thoughts myself almost despising. Happily I think on thee, and then my state, like to the lark at break of day, arising from sullen earth, sings hymns at heaven's gate. For their sweet love remembered such wealth brings, that then I scorn to change my state with kings. The last piece that I will be performing is a monologue taken from the one-act play Hello, Goodbye, Peace by Gabriel Davis. In this piece, Alina dreams about getting the opportunity to address the whole of humanity, and she takes a moment to instill some lessons and warn them before her 2 minutes is up. I'll be playing the character of Alina, a barista at a local Manhattan coffee shop. It underlines the themes of desperation and urgency. So you are all of humanity? You are all of humanity? You are all of humanity? You're not what I expected you would look like. Well, you kind of look like my 14-year-old nephew. I'm told I only have 2 minutes with you to talk some sense into you. And I appreciate your time. I'm told the opportunity to address you comes but once in a lifetime. No pressure. It's just a play. You may not like this. What are you doing? Really? Seriously? You're incredibly bright and capable. You put a man on the moon, created an international space station, flew over to Mars. You're on your way to becoming intelligent and growing up. But you seem distracted. My nephew, he's the same. Always distracted. Always playing video games instead of doing his homework. Obsessed with earning virtual gold on World of Warcraft. You've created these intricate games where you strive to achieve the highest possible numbers. Like my nephew, earning the highest possible numbers drives you. Yet the real numbers, the ones that will advance your sciences, so you can move out of your parents' house, also known as the earth. Those numbers you barely even look at. Don't you want your own little place out in the cosmos? That's how you want to survive long term, right? You're certainly smart enough to do it. But you're distracted. And you sure are angry a lot. Like my nephew. He's always fighting with his sister, or coming up or anticipating a fight with her, or coming up with great ways to one-up her. He loves drama, he loves conflict. You frustrate me, humanity, because you have all the knowledge to take care of yourself, but you don't apply it. Sure, you have tiny pockets, small areas of health and vitality, but overall, just look at you. You're mostly underfed, malnourished, physically unfit, undereducated. Those numbers don't lie, buddy. Right now, your parents' house is well stocked. You can use the resources there to mature and learn about those real numbers and make something out of yourself. There's enough, so you can mature all of yourself. But not if you keep multiplying like you've been. Please keep those hormones in check. Like I tell my nephew, there'll be plenty of time for dating when you head off to college. Oh no, I have my snooze alarm going off. I guess this is it. My 2 minutes is up. I hope this is all sinking in, because I'm going to wake up in a second. Bottom line, you may not have the time you think you have. A rock could fall out of the sky, you could catch a bad cold or have bad weather. Bad things can happen. No more distractions. Cut out the fighting and the games. Focus. Prepare to move out of your parents' house. Grow up, humanity. Please grow up. Moving on, I'll be reading and cite a passage of prose taken from Heidi by Johanna Spyri. A short time after the tutor had arrived next morning, the doorbell rang so violently that the butler thought there must be some emergency. He was most surprised to see a dirty street boy with a barrel organ on his back standing before him. "What do you mean by pulling the bell like that?" he said. "I want to see Clara." "Can't you at least say Miss Clara, you ragged urchin?" he said harshly. "She owes me 40 pennies, said the boy. "You are crazy! How do you know Miss Clara lives here?" "I showed her the way yesterday and she promised to give me 40 pennies. "What nonsense! Miss Clara never goes out. You had better take yourself off before I send you off." The boy, however, did not even budge and said, "I saw her. She has curly hair, black eyes and talks in a funny way." "Oh, The butler chuckled to himself. That was the little miss. Pulling the boy into the house, he said, "All right, you can follow me. Wait at the door till I call you, and then you can play something for Miss Clara." Knocking at the study door, he said, when he had entered, "A boy is here who wants to see Miss Clara." Clara, happy at his interruption, said, "Can't he come right up?" But the boy was already inside, and he had already started to play. Her mistress was in the room next door when she heard the sounds. Where did they come from? Hurrying into the study, she saw the street boy playing to the eager children. Moving on to my reflection task. How do you feel your performances went? What were you most pleased with? Overall, all my performances went really well. Starting with the passage of prose, I really liked the storyline and the overall plot. Moving on to the sonnet, I loved the constant change in emotion of the speaker. And lastly, I had to step into the shoes of my character Alina to show that sense of urgency and desperation. I was most pleased with my monologue as I had to use sound modulation and use a lot of space and make it look completely different from the first two pieces. Choose one of your pieces and talk about how the characters or narrator's feelings changed. I will be talking about how the character's feelings changed in Sonnet 29 by William Shakespeare. At first, the character bemoans his status as an outcast and a failure and envies the men who look more attractive than him. But later on, he thinks about his beloved one, and this makes him feel contrary to what he was feeling before. And then he scorns to replace his status with a king. Describe the imaginary surroundings in one of your pieces. I will be describing the imaginary surroundings in my passage of prose, The Landlady by Roald Dahl. This piece is situated in Bath, England, after the war, which is evident by the buildings that Billy sees upon walking into the town. Billy is seated in the landlady's living room of her bed and breakfast. There is homely furniture like 2 plump chairs, a baby grand piano, and a comfortable sofa. Billy is seated to the left of the landlady, and in front of him on the center table lies a book which contains the information of the people who have visited before and his cup of tea. Crouched in front of the fireplace is a stuffed Dachshund who looks almost lifelike, and suspended in front of the windows is a stuffed parrot in a metal cage. Overall, I really enjoyed choosing and performing one of my pieces. Thank you.